Hi guys and welcome to this class, and today we'll be talking about the physiology of pain. Now, let's get started. Yeah, welcome back. Now, talking about the physiology of pain. Physiology of pain. What you're going to learn here is actually an in-depth understanding of what happens whenever the transmission of pain begins and whenever it stops. Now, this physiology of pain, it has 4 stages. So, I won't be telling you the stages right now, but as we proceed, you'll be getting to know them. Now, let's get started with the diagram of the skin. So let's assume that this is someone's skin now. Let's come to the lower part of the board to illustrate that. So let's say this is the epidermis now. So, and this is the dermis now, which contains some cells. And now, we're going to have some kind of receptors right here. And that is the first order neuron. So the first order neuron, ready to carry an impulse. Right? Now, let's say this person steps on a nail, or maybe mistakenly got pinned with a nail. What is going to happen? You will realize that this nail is actually damaging a cell here. And what will happen to the cell? Let me take you to a more magnified area. Now, what do you think will happen here? A cell has been damaged. Let's say this is the cell now. The nucleus of the cell, but we don't really need it actually. Now, the cell has been damaged. Let's pick this right here now. Now, whenever a cell is damaged, they release something called arachidonic acid. Just like tears. You can just think of it as what? As tears, although they are not tears. But since the cell has been damaged due to the presence of this nail, so protruding into the body cavity, so the cell has been damaged. And the cell is going to release some kind of chemicals. And these chemicals are called what? Arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid. And now what will happen next? This arachidonic acid is going to come down to bind with a receptor of the cell called COX. Called what? COX. And if you are yet to watch our video on inflammation, you can go back there actually, because this is the beginning of inflammation. So if you've been with us from day one, trust me, I know you understand this. But if you are not, you can just type inflammation by DSS Generation to YouTube, and it's going to bring our video. Now, back to what I was discussing. The point is that this is the skin now, and we have the what? The first order neuron right here. Now, the point is that whenever an injury is inflicted on the cells are going to release some kind of chemicals called what? Arachidonic acid. And now the arachidonic acid will come down to bind with this thing called the COX. COX means cyclooxygenase. Cyclooxygenase. We have 1 and 2. So it can bind with either of the 2. But for pain, 2 is the one we used to use. So you can forget 1 or 2 for now. The point is that this arachidonic acid will come down to bind with what? To bind with these COX. And then this action will lead to the production of what? Of prostaglandin. Prostaglandin. As simple as that. Now we'll come back a little bit. The point is that whenever a cell is damaged, the point is that the cell is going to release chemicals called what? Arachidonic acid. And the arachidonic acid will bind with COX. And then it will lead to the production of something called prostaglandin. As simple as that. Now, I will illustrate the prostaglandin with another O. Now, the point is, this cell will release what now? It will release prostaglandin. Let's say PG. And now, look here carefully. There are some other surrounding cells that can be damaged as well. And they can be the immune cells of the skin too. The immune cell of the skin. The immune cell of the what? Immune cells of the skin. Now, if I'm taking you deeply into the knowledge of the skin, what are the immune cells of the skin? The Langerhans cells. So, if you don't know that, just go with the integumentary system very well. You will understand that. Now, back to what we were discussing. These immune cells too, they can secrete something called bradykinin. Brady what? Bradykinin. And apart from that, they can release other vasoactive mediators like cytokines so etc. So the point is that this thing that is happening right here is the first stage of the physiology of pain. You know, I told you we have 4 stages. So the point is that whenever something inflicts injury on the body cells, so that is just a noxious stimuli. So the point is that that nail is going to damage some cells, and the cell are going to release something called what? Arachidonic acid. And the arachidonic acid will bind with what? With prostaglandin. I mean, with COX rather. And the COX will produce what now? Prostaglandin. And now, this prostaglandin is going to be released. So, what is going to happen to them? Immune cells too can also release what? Bradykinin. So, we have PG and the B now. Prostaglandin and what? And bradykinin. Now, what are these prostaglandin and this bradykinin going to do? The prostaglandin and the bradykinin, they will bind with what? They are going to send the impulse of pain. That is the function of prostaglandin. So, the P in front of prostaglandin, we use it as a cheat to remember that it is meant for the sensitization of pain. So it's going to send the impulse of pain onto the receptive what? The receptive dendrites of the first order neuron. So apart from that, this bradykinin too can also send an impulse of pain to the receptive dendrite of this what? Of this first order neuron. As simple as that. And now I would like to add some things to it. I told you that in the ascending pathway we have 3 other neurons. So the first one is the first order neuron, the second one is the second order neuron, and the third one is the third order neuron. All these guys, they are called nociceptors. Noci what? Nociceptors. Which means this first order neuron now is a what? A nociceptor. A nociceptor. And what is the meaning of that? Nociceptor is actually a receptor that is responsible for receiving the impulse of pain. And if you take a look at this, they are receiving the impulse of pain from prostaglandin and bradykinin, and that makes them a what? A nociceptor. Nociceptors are just like receptors. The point is that receptors, we have different receptors in our body. You should know that in our homeostasis. If you don't, check our video on homeostasis, you get a better understanding. Now, the point is that we have some receptors in our body responsible for receiving the message, the impulse of pain. So they are called pain receptors. And on the other way around, you can call them nociceptors. So whenever someone inflicts any kind of injury on you, they are the one receiving that impulse. I hope you understand that now. As simple as that. Now, the point is that we have 2 types of nociceptors. 2 types of what? Of nociceptors. So the first one are called larger A fiber. And the second one are called smaller C fiber. In some textbook, they will call this larger A fiber larger alpha delta fiber. Some textbook they will call it larger A delta fiber alone. So, but the point is, just take larger A fiber and smaller C fiber. Now, this is a question. Can you predict this first order neuron? Is it a larger A fiber or a smaller C fiber? Do not disturb yourself. If you don't have the knowledge, you can't pick the right answer. Now, what is the knowledge? Just remember that this is larger A fiber. Remember that this A is for acute pain. Acute what? Acute pain. And this smaller C is for chronic pain. Chronic what? Chronic pain. And now, what is the meaning of that? The meaning of that is that this larger A fiber, they are the kind of nociceptors that carries what? Acute pain. They are the one responsible for transmitting the impulse of acute pain. So the question is, what is the meaning of acute pain? The word acute means sudden. And when something is sudden, it occurs suddenly, that thing is obviously going to be fast. So acute pain are the pain that occurs suddenly, and they are very fast. Example is a needle prick. So if they prick you with a needle and remove it quickly, you feel the pain suddenly, and the pain will be very fast. So that's what? An acute pain. So those kind of pains are transmitted by what? By larger A fiber. Now, what are the smaller C fibers? As in, what are the chronic pain rather? So the smaller C fiber, they are the kind of receptors that carries what? Chronic pain. And what is the meaning of chronic? Chronic actually means something that is severe. And for something to be severe, it must have been prolonged. So the smaller C fiber, they carry chronic pain that are severe and prolonged. So if it is prolonged, it means it is slow too. So they carry what? Slow pain. And they are also diffuse. There are a lot of characteristics on the what? On the chronic pain. I'm sorry about my voice, so just a little bit tired today. Now, back to what we were discussing. The point is that this first order neuron, they are nociceptors. And we have two types of nociceptors. We have the larger A fiber and the smaller C fiber. So the letter A fiber are responsible for carrying acute pain. So pain that are sharp, sudden, and fast. So the point is that the smaller C fiber are responsible for carrying chronic pain. This pain that are what? That are severe, prolonged, slow, and what? They are diffused. Now, let me give you an example of chronic pain, just like I did for acute pain. So example of acute pain is a little prick. But example of chronic pain is let's say you sleep and then you fell and then you smashed your head on the floor and then the head becomes big, as in it swells. So the kind of pain you're feeling there is a chronic pain because it won't go easily, like that of the needle prick. In seconds, you've forgotten that you've been pricked. But that one will always be there for like weeks. So it is a chronic pain. It's a diffuse pain. It's a very slow and severe pain. I hope you understand that now. So whenever you have a slow and diffuse pain or a prolonged pain, just know that the nerve fiber carrying it is what? The smaller C fiber. And whenever you have a sharp pain, a fast one, very sudden, just know that the one carrying it is what? The letter A fiber. As simple as that. And that is all you have to know about this first stage of what? Of physiology of pain. And the name of this first stage rather is called transduction. Trans what? Transduction. That is the first stage of what? Of the physiology of pain. Now, what is transduction if you want to define it? What do you think happens here? What happens here right from here is that we have a noxious stimuli. A noxious stimuli is this nail here destroying the what? Destroying the cell. So it's a noxious stimuli. It brings about a noxious stimuli. So, and now the person experienced some kind of pain, right? And how did we convert this pain, this noxious stimuli? How did we convert it into an impulse? We converted it using the knowledge of arachidonic acid combining with this to turn to prostaglandin that will send it. And that is transduction. Transduction is just the conversion of a noxious stimuli into a what? Into an electrical impulse. Remember, into an electrical impulse. So that is the definition of transduction. The conversion of what? Of a noxious stimuli. It will be conversion of a noxious stimulus, or you say conversion of noxious stimuli. Because stimuli will be plural and A won't be suitable there according to grammar. Now back to what we were discussing. I know you have to argue grammar. Now this is the point. Transduction is what? Transduction is the conversion or the change of what? Of this noxious stimuli, the nail. So injuring the what? The cell into what? Into an action potential. Another definition. So you can just say into an electrical impulse. So through action potential, etc. As simple as that. That is the definition. And then you start saying, whenever a cell is damaged, what's going to happen? The cell will release something called arachidonic acid. The arachidonic acid will bind with COX, and that will lead to the production of what? Of prostaglandin. And the prostaglandin is actually a neurotransmitter that carries the impulse of pain. And to carry the impulse of pain onto the what? Onto the receptive dendrite. From the receptive dendrite onto the receptive dendron and into this cell body. And this is a nerve normally. And we said these receptors are called the what? Nociceptors. And we have two types of these nociceptors. So we said the first one are called the what? They are called the larger A fiber. And the second one are called the what? They are called the smaller C fiber. And then we said the larger A fiber carries what? Acute pain, which is sudden and fast. Example is needle prick. And then the smaller C fiber, they carry what? They carry chronic pain, which is severe, prolonged, slow, and diffused. As simple as that. Even if I want to disturb you more, though I don't really have to do that. We have two types of neuron. We have the myelinated neuron and the non-myelinated neuron. So which one do you think carries acute pain? Which one do you think carries the chronic pain? Obviously, the acute pain is carried by what? It's going to be carried by the myelinated neuron because it's fast. And the non-myelinated neuron will be for what? For chronic pain, which means the larger A fibers are myelinated, while your smaller C fiber are non-myelinated. Trust me, if you don't get that, forget about it. It's not really actually for now. When we read the nervous system, you'll be learning more about that. Now, as simple as that, that is what? The first stage of what? Of the physiology of what? Of pain, called transduction. Just a quick recap one more time. The point is that whenever you are hurt by something, so some kind of damage that caused onto your cells, and the cell will release what? Arachidonic acid. And the arachidonic acid will what? It is going to bind with something called the COX, and they will lead to the production of something called prostaglandin. And prostaglandin is a neurotransmitter for what? For pain. It carries the impulse of pain. And that's what happens here. The cell will release prostaglandin and it carries it onto this what? Onto this nociceptor. Apart from that, we said some immune cells on the skin can also what? Produce bradykinin and do the same function. As simple as that. And I told you that these neurons that are going to carry the what? The impulse of pain are called nociceptor. And we have two types, whether A fiber and smaller C fiber. And that is the end of what? Of transduction. Now, I will proceed. What do you think will happen next? Now, from the knowledge of pain pathway, now this is what? This is a nociceptor, a first order neuron. So it's going to go like this, right? And now it is coming straight up into another structure of the what? Another structure of the body, to the spinal cord. And that is the gray matter. I think I should just drop the board and come in with the second stage. I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. Now, let's talk about the second phase. Now, this is the point. Let's do a quick recap using some kind of technical drawing actually. So, now, let's say this is the person's leg now. Now, the person stepped on a nail mistakenly, right? And we said some cells become damaged, right? And after that, we said we have some what? Some receptors here. You have to carry the what? To carry the impulse. So we said the damaged cell releases what? Arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid then binds with what? With COX, and they produce prostaglandin. So we said prostaglandin is going to what? It's going to send the impulse of pain onto what now? Onto this cell, onto this neuron here. So we said apart from that, some nearby immune cells can also do what? Can produce bradykinin. And bradykinin can send an impulse of pain to this what? To this guy right here. As simple as that. And from there, we said this cell that is going to carry the what? That is going to carry the impulse. It's called a nociceptor. And we said we have two types of what? Two types of nociceptor. We said the first one had the what? The larger A fiber and they carry acute pain. And the second one had the what? The smaller C fiber and they carry chronic pain. So talking about myelination. So A is myelinated and the C are non-myelinated. Now the point is that all those things are what? Transduction. Just a way we converted or change our what? Our noxious stimuli into what? Into an electrical potential. So as simple as that. Electrical impulse rather. So the point is that this is what? This is the axon of that neuron. And then we know that it's going to enter into what? Into the gray matter of the spinal cord. So the impulse is coming to this H-shaped structure called the gray matter, right? Good. Now, within the gray matter, so we've understand that what is going to happen here is that the impulse is going to, okay, let's complete the diagram first. I have the white matter right here. We have the what? The dorsal root and the posterior on. So the point is that the impulse is going to travel through the axon, enter through the dorsal root and the posterior on into the what now? Into the spinal cord. The spinal cord, this is the what? Which part of the spinal cord? The gray matter. So we said it is going to synapse with another neuron right here. And that neuron will carry it into the what? Into the white matter. So normally, what is going to happen here? So we have a structure here called the what? The Substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. Substantia gelatinosa for short. Normally, once we're disturbing you, although we don't really need it, we have different rex lamina in the what? In the spinal cord. So rex lamina. So rex lamina. So this rex lamina, it is actually the one that houses the substantia gelatinosa of Rolando. But you can just leave that for now. Not really necessary. Now the point is that this guy is going to release a chemical called the what? Substance P. And the substance P will transmit the impulse onto the what? Receptive dendrite of this neuron. And from there to the what? Receptive dendron of this neuron. Then to the what? Into the cell body. From the cell body into the axon. But this axon will cross into the what? Into the white matter of the spinal cord. White matter of the spinal cord. And from there we said it's going to ascend to go up. And when it goes up, it is going somewhere. And where it is going to here is called the thalamus. And that thalamus is actually within the what? Within the brain. As simple as that. So we said the thalamus is within the what? It's within the brain. Now, if that be the point, we said this tract that takes the impulse from the what? From the spinal cord into the what? Into the thalamus is called the spinothalamic tract. Spinothalamic tract. And we said it forms the what? It's from the ascending pathway. of pain, ascending pathway of pain. Now, that be the case. We stopped at the thalamus, right? You see, all the process, right of the right from rather the conduction of this impulse up to this thalamus here, that is the second stage of what? Of physiology of pain. You see, it is something you've known right from the pain pathway. I'm just going to repeat everything again. And that second stage is called transmission. Trans what? Transmission. Transmission. And that is what? The second process or the second stage of the physiology of pain. Now, how do you define transmission rather? So you can just say transmission is the conduction of what? Of what? Of the pain impulse from the first order neuron being in the receptor. So to the what? Just to the thalamus. And then you cannot start talking about the stages that the axon is going to transmit the impulse through the dorsal root and posterior horn into the gray matter, falls into the rex to lamina. So rex to lamina 2 actually is where we can find substantia gelatinosa. You don't need to trust me. The point is, it falls into the substantia gelatinosa in short, and that is going to release substance P. So we transmit the impulse of P onto the second order neuron. And the second order neuron we ascend through the ascending pathway made up of a tract called the spinothalamic tract and stop in the thalamus. As simple as that. And that is the what? That is the what? The next phase or the next stage of what? Of the physiology of pain. And now, what next? I've told you before that once the impulse stopped within this what? Within this thalamus. So the impulse, this is the axon now. So the axon will form terminal dendron, terminal dendrite, and what? And synaptic nerve. You've known all this thing before thanks to the pain pathway actually. So as a result, it's going to be easy for you. So the point is that these guys, they are going to release another substance P again, which will send an impulse onto the what? Onto the third order neuron. And now, this thalamus, apart from being a relay station, that is where impulses are relayed from the second order neuron to the third order neuron here. So it is also some kind of sorting system. So it performs the function of sorting. So it looks for the neuron going to different parts of what? Of this somatosensory cortex. Now remember that this person stepped on the what? On the nail. The part of the body affected is the leg. And I told you that in this somatosensory cortex, we have the leg right here, right? And then the leg will form the trunk here. And then you have the head around this place. And then you're going to have your what next? Can have your fingers next. So, and then the thumb. So as simple as that. And then you have your what? Can have the face right here. So the point is that this thalamus is just like a sorting system. And what this is going to do is going to tell this what? This third order neuron to go to different parts of this what? Of the brain, depending on the part affected. Now tell me, the person stepped on a nail, which is the leg. Where do you think the axon of this third order neuron go? Where do you think it will go? Yeah? Obviously not. The person is not inflicted. The person did not receive the impulse through the face, as in the injury through the face. It's actually through the leg. So the axon will actually go to this section now. And when it comes here, it sends an impulse to this what? To this region of the somatosensory cortex. And what do you think will happen? The pain is going to be perceived. And what? Perceived. So the brain will tell you that you are stepping on a what? On a nail. And then this process is the third process of what? Of physiology of pain called perception. In some textbook, they call it perception and interpretation. Perception and interpretation of pain. As simple as that. And now, what definition can you give to this? For perception, you can just say it is a processing of what? Of pain impulses. So, from the thalamus to the what? To the somatosensory cortex. Or you say within the thalamus and the what? And the somatosensory cortex. As simple as that. And then you can just tell us that, okay, the thalamus is going to synapse to the second order neuron, and then the third order neuron will carry the impulse to the appropriate section of the what? Of the somatosensory cortex, where the pain is perceived and interpreted. As simple as that. And we are done. And now what about the descending pathway? Descending pathway, I'm going to drop the board and come in with it, because this is the what? The ascending pathway. And the major function of the ascending pathway is perception of pain. I hope you remember that. Now, let's talk about the descending pathway, and that will be the last phase of the what? Of the physiology of pain. Now, I'll clean the board and come in right again. I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. And now, we've talked about the perception of pain. So being the third stage of what? Of the physiology of pain. So we started with transduction. So the conversion or the change of what? Of the noxious stimulant and electrical impulse. And after that, we talked about what? We talked about transmission. That's the movement of the impulse from the nociceptor into the what? Into the thalamus. And then we talked about the perception. So that is the sorting of the impulse to the appropriate center in the what? In the smart sensory cortex. So bringing about the perception. Now, let's talk about the what? About the descending pathway. So, and it has a name under the physiology of what? Of pain. So the descending pathway brings about modulation. So modulation is actually the last stage or the last stage in what? In physiology of pain. And now, let's get started. Let me bring in some diagram first. Now, this is the somatosensory cortex, right? And now, we've known that the point is that we have two structures right here, and those structures are called the thalami collectively. Thalamus for singular, right? Okay. Now, talking about the descending pathway in our last video, I told you that the descending pathway can be orchestrated, it can be controlled, it can be influenced by different brain structures. And I gave you a couple of them actually. Now, you can just list this out just to know about them actually. So the descending pathway can be controlled by the limbic system of the brain. So you call it the limbic system, limbic. So the limbic. I have some structures there like the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus itself can actually send signals to some other brain structures. So apart from that, this somatosensory cortex itself, it can also do what? It can also initiate the what? It can initiate the descending pathway I'm about to talk about. And then apart from that, another thing, so these thalamus themselves, they can initiate what? They can initiate the descending pathway. And apart from that, we also have some structures. For example now, within this thalamus, we have some kind of cavity rather within it. And that cavity is called the ventricle of the brain. And that ventricle is the third ventricle, if I'm not mistaken. Third ventricle. So the third ventricle. So this third ventricle, we have some gray matter surrounding them. Some what? Some gray matter. So tell me, if you want to name this gray matter, because they are surrounding this third ventricle, what are you going to call them? What is surrounding is peri. So you just call them periventricular gray matter. Simple. So peri what? Periventricular gray matter. Periventricular gray matter. As simple as that. I think the gray matter that's peri that surrounds the ventricle. As simple as that. And then I told you about some other systems too. This one is called the PVG actually. PVG. So periventricular gray matter. I told you about the next one to the PAG. So PAG. I hope you remember that. So that is the what? The periaqueductal gray matter that surrounds the what? The cerebral aqueduct or the aqueduct of midbrain or the aqueduct of Sylvius. So apart from that, we have the locus ceruleus. I'm not mistaken. Of course not. So locus ceruleus. Ceruleus. So that's another bunch of what? Bunch of bodies in the brain that can actually initiate the what? The descending pathway. Apart from that, we have the paragigantocellular reticular nuclei. So actually that is a little bit mouthful. So paragigantocellular reticular nucleus. So that's another name for another structure in the brain. So the reticular formation itself. So that is where we can find this paragigantocellular reticular nucleus. So and a lot of systems like that in the brain too. So a lot of things can do what? Can actually regulate these stuff right here. But the point is I'm just looking to give you a little bit of them. So RNM too can do the same. So the Raphael nuclei magnus. Sometimes they call it nucleus Raphael magnus. So the other is not really important, I think. That's the reason why they're interchanging it in different textbooks. Now, this is the point. Let's come back to where we're coming from. The point is that I just wanted to know that all these guys, they can do what? They can regulate this or descending pathway. The somatosensory cortex is there, I did not even put it there. So a lot of things like that. Now, let's come back to work. This is the point. We already know that this is our cerebrum. And under it, we have the brainstem. And the acronym for the brainstem is what? MPM, right? Okay, so let's bring it in. So we have the midbrain first under this place. Okay, so let's make it this way. The midbrain. And I told you inside the midbrain, I have a ventricle there called the what? The cerebral aqueduct. Excuse me? Excuse me, please. Yes, that's true. Cerebral aqueduct. And I told you that the cerebral aqueduct is surrounded by what? By gray matter. And the name of those gray matter is called what? Periaqueductal gray matter. From the word peri, surrounds. Oh, I did not put it there. Okay, let me just label it here. So all these guys are called what? Periaqueductal gray matter. Periaqueductal gray matter. Let's just put GN for short. Now, let me come back a little bit. The point is that these are what? This is our cerebrum. So, we have some kind of thalamus, thalami, and between them we have a ventricle. And then the name of these cell bodies that are found around it is actually the what? The periventricular gray matter, the PAG. And these one are the what? The PV together. These one are the PAG for short. So periaqueductal gray matter. Now, after that, I said they have another structure under it, and that is our pons. But we don't really need it, so there's nothing much about it. And then under the pons, MPM, we have another structure right here, and that is the medulla oblongata, right? So the medulla oblongata, I told you that inside it, we have some nuclei here too, and they're the what? The RNA. So the raphe nuclei or nucleus rather magnus. So these guys too, they have a lot of what? A lot of neurons inside them. So now let's take a look at what used to happen here. Remember that right here we have our what? We have our gray matter. Let me use a blue marker to indicate that. Gray matter. Now, I want to complete the diagram. Let's just have our white matter. So, the dorsal column, lateral column here too. Now, guys, remember that we have a neuron, the first order neuron, coming from the what? From the noxious stimuli. So, passing through the what? Dorsal root and the posterior horn. And then they are going to synapse in a place here called what? Called the Substantia gelatinosa. And then they will use some kind of neurotransmitters, right? And then the neurotransmitter sends an impulse to the second order neuron, which will cross into the what? Into the white matter of the spinal cord, right? And after that, the impulse is going to ascend upward and go straight up into the what? Into this place called the what? Called the thalamus. Now, what do you think will happen next? This is the point. As this spinothalamic tract, as it is running up, it branches off into some fibers. And these fibers, from the word branches off, they are missing. That is the meaning of that. Now, let me tell you a very short story. Sorry about that, guys. Now, this is the point. Now, you understand all this diagram on the board now. So, these are what? These are our substantia gelatinosa. So, where the transmission of impulses occur in the spinal cord. And then we said it runs up like this to the thalamus, right? Now, I told you that what we are dealing with now is modulation, which is the what? The last stage. But we used to use the descending pathway to explain it. Descending what? Descending pathway. Now remember, in our pain pathway, I told that in the descending pathway, a neuron will run down to release something called endorphin inside this place to kill the effect of substance P, to reduce its production, and to reduce the transmission of pain. Right? Now, we know what we want to do lastly is to just cut the supply of what? Of substance P. Now, to do that, let me tell you a very interesting story. Assume that this place, Substantia gelatinosa, is on fire. Now, if the Substantia gelatinosa is on fire, you know, in our normal environment, we have the firefighters and their companies. They have to rush down to our aid, right? Now, let's assume that the company for what? For firefighters is this thalamus here. So, firefighters. And not only that, this midbrain as well. So, company for the firefighters. And then, this medulla oblongata too. Firefighters as well. Now, we have some kind of fire burning here. But they've sent some people through the thalamus to come and what? To come and quench it. But they realized that the fire is too much, too wide. And then they started running back together with the impulse. You know this is your impulse for what? For the ascending pathway. That is carrying the impulse to the what? To the thalamus. Now assume that these impulses They are 10 in number. And they are the what? They are the firefighters that come from what? From this thalamus. Now, if these 10 people, if they keep on running backward into the thalamus, who is going to quench the fire? Nobody. Now let's assume that two people, one and two, they branched off just to inform another company that there is a fire downward here. These people now, they are two in numbers. When they count their numbers here, instead of 10, they are going to be what? They are going to be 8. It means two people are missing. And because they are missing, they derive their name from the word missing. And they call them what now? Tell me, this tract is called what? Spinothalamic tract. So they used to call their name spinothalamic missing fiber. Spinal what? Spinothalamic missing fiber. And in some other textbook, they call them spinal missing cephalic fiber. Cephalic fiber. That's another name in some other textbook. So you can call them the SMF, spinothalamic missing fiber, or SMCF, or actually they used to call them SMF again as well. So they neglect the C, the C for cephalic. So they also call them spinal missing cephalic fiber. The point is that these guys, they realized that the fire is too wide and they started rushing back. And then, just because of these two people, they feel pity for them. So, and then they quickly report down to the what? To another firefighters company here. And now, this firefighters company is the what? Is the midbrain. And within the midbrain, we have these firefighters who are the what? The periaqueductal brain matter. And what is this periaqueductal brain matter going to do? They are going to be lazy and look downward like this. And they will realize that they have another firefighters company below them. And they will tell them to go and do the job, since they are closer. So the point is that they are going to send an impulse using their own bundle of nerves. And that nerve is going to come down to the what? To this Raphael nucleus magnus. And Raphael nucleus magnus, being the firefighter company, will send another worker to do what? To go and quench the fire inside the what? Inside the substantia gelatinosa. And that is the reason why we have this short neuron here. This neuron here now. Coming into the what? Into the substantia gelatinosa. Now, we are 70% done. But let me make a quick recap again. For the sending pathway, it can be initiated by a lot of things. So, even the spinothalamic tract is still part of them. I hope you understand that. So, here now, I'm using the approach for the spinothalamic tract, spinothalamic tract rather, and not the what? And not the somatosensory cortex or the thalamus or anything. So, the point is that after the impulse is being rushed to the what? To the brain, some fibers are going to what? To branch out. They call them the spinothalamic missing fiber or what? Spinal missing cephalic fiber. And now, what are they going to do? They are going to send impulse down to the what? To the periaqueductal brain matter. And the periaqueductal brain matter, what? Will descend down with the aid of one of its neuron or more. And then that will come down into the what? Into the Raphael nucleus magnus. And within the Raphael nucleus magnus, another neuron is going to what? Is going to arise. And then it's going to rush into the what? Into the substantia gelatinosa. And now, what is it going to be doing there? I'm going to magnify the what? The substantia gelatinosa into this section. And then we are going to have what? We are going to see what is really going on inside this place. And now, let's do that quickly. Now, if this is our substantia gelatinosa, remember that we have 3 neurons here now. This is the first order neuron coming into this red shaped portion, which is your what? Substantia gelatinosa volando. So this is that neuron. That's the first order neuron. And tell me, what is the function of this first order neuron? It is meant to release some kind of neurotransmitter to carry the impulse of pain called what? Substance P. And it is releasing it on the what? On this second order neuron here. Let me use the blue marker. So it is meant to be releasing it on this what? On the second order neuron. And second order neuron will run down like this and then upward. So to form this spinothalamic tract right here. I hope you understand that. Now, what next? We've gotten this what? This small red baby here. Coming from the what? From the Raphael nucleus magnus. So, and then now, the guy too is right here. Which is what? With the synaptic nerve. And now this guy is carrying a different neurotransmitter. And what is the name of that neurotransmitter? We call it serotonin. Serotonin what? Serotonin. They also call it 5-hydroxyltryptamine. So, serotonin. And now, what will the serotonin do? I will introduce you to one more neuron now. So, there's a neuron between all these guys. and that neuron is called interneuron. Inter what? Interneuron. And now, why are they calling it interneuron? Simply because it is inter. Inter means between. So it is between all the neurons here. So they call it interneuron. So a neuron that is between another neuron, interneuron. Now the point is that the serotonin released by this nerve or by this fiber is going to act on the what? On the interneuron. And it will tell this interneuron to start producing another thing as well. And this interneuron will produce something called endorphin. Endo what? Endorphin. And the endorphin will now what? It will stop the production of what? To stop the production of substance P. As simple as that. And when it stops the production of substance P will not be able to move onto this next neuron. And this next neuron will not receive any impulse. And when it doesn't receive any impulse, the impulse will not travel into the what? Into the spinothalamic tract. And when there is no impulse in the spinothalamic tract, no impulse of pain will be going to the brain. And the brain will not be able to do what? Will not be able to perceive any pain. And therefore, we've modulated the pain. And that is what? Modulation, which is the last step. And now to understand better, let me explain just one more time. This is what happens in what? In the modulation aspect, the descending pathway. The point is that as this spinothalamic tract are rushing upward, they give off branches called what? The spinothalamic missing fiber. Or you call them spinal missing cephalic what? Fiber. And the spinal missing cephalic fiber, they are going to what? Stimulate the what? The fibers of what? Of this periaqueductal gray matter. So, and then they will send their nerve fibers downward into the what? Into the raphe magnus. And that's going to send an impulse into the what? Into another neuron there. And that will go into the what? Into the substantia gelatinosa. And within the substantia gelatinosa, it's going to release something called the what? Serotonin. And the serotonin will act on the what? It will act on some neuron called the interneurons. And the interneuron will now produce what? Endorphin. And the endorphin, I've told you before, it is endogenous morphine, a painkiller produced by our body. And that is what will stop the effect of what? Of substance P. And when your first order neuron cannot send an impulse down to the what? To this, cannot produce substance P, it will send impulse down to the second order neuron. And since there is no transmission of impulse again, there will be no perception of pain. As simple as that. And now, let me clear something. Apart from endorphin, this interneuron can also release things like enkephalin. Enkephal what? Enkephalin. And apart from enkephalin, it can also release dynorphin. But the point is, they are all giving the same effects. They stop the production of what? Of substance P. As simple as that. And now, what next about the physiology of pain? Just like to tell you about the rationale behind massage. But maybe I should not. If you need it, just comment in the section below and then we'll talk about it. But for today, this will be the end of this video. So everything on our pain pathway has come to an end. And before we actually end the video, a quick shout out to one of our sponsors as well, in person of Nurse Phillips. So the CEO of floxxyunisexsalon. So he's the one responsible for what? For giving us this video for free. And he will do a very kind job by doing what? By checking his DM out. And you'll find that in our link in the description below. So just take a look at what they do. Until next time, I wish you the very best, guys.